In our town, it really isn't shocking to see a fight go down. I've seen kids with house keys tucked between their knuckles throwing punches at each other. I've seen 10 guys from our school chasing 4 dudes from another school down a block, and a stranger step into the melee with a bat to protect the guys who were outnumbered. And Gutso, Dwyer, and I spent most of Jill's party telling ourselves we were tough as balls and that what happened outside Jerry's was nothing. It wasn't on our minds, we kept telling each other. No big deal. MBD, Dwyer wrote in beer on the wooden slats of the back porch with a nozzle from the keg. In fact, we spent most of the party on that back porch, ignoring everyone else. Gutso never said a word to Jill for me, and through the window, I saw English moving through the room like the friggin' king he is, getting up close to girls and making them laugh and giggle. I was sure if he found Jill, it'd be the same. I was out there in the darkness of the back porch, looking in through the window to the bright kitchen, like I was watching the whole damn party unfold on TV. I gave Gutso my flask at some point, and when I eventually got it back, it was empty, but I didn't bug him about it. Because even though what happened at Jerry's was MBD, it was really all we talked about that night. My brother has to deal with that shit every day, Gutso kept saying. He just does it. No complaints. He's amazing. But what had always amazed me most about Gutso's brother Paul was how he had made time for me. I was 10 when my father died, and it was Paul who'd taken me down to Gooch to practice. Gooch was the neighborhood park, but Paul'd get us down there so early we'd have the whole court to ourselves. He showed me how to do the spider drill, how to dribble with 2 balls, how to tuck my elbows when I shot. But the man I'd watched grind a kid into the sidewalk, was like someone else. Someone I couldn't place, some hulking animal stalking the shadows of my mind. All night, I could hear his voice, and yet it wasn't him. I could see his face, and yet it wasn't him. Dwyer and Gutso drank much more than I did, and they stood around the keg shouting out the lyrics of all the hip-hop songs blasting from the living room inside. Earlier that day, I'd imagined myself dancing with Jill, hands in the air and then down along her back to her hips as she draped hers around my neck. But I spent most of the night still stuck on that sidewalk outside Jerry's, my heart pumping fiercely in my throat, and when someone at Jill's yelled that the cops had arrived, I almost thought I'd call them there with my mind. I slept terribly, but no matter how much or how little I sleep, I begin almost every day the same way. Ma's voice in my head, telling me what I needed to do, what I needed to think about, how I needed to act. But on mornings like this one, or if Coach Carney was making us do suicides up and down the court for 15 minutes, or when Dwyer dropped another 5-pounder on either side of the bar on my last rep in the weight room, it was Dad's voice in my head, or at least what I thought was his voice. I hadn't heard it in so long I couldn't even tell if it was his or if I was making it up. Whatever it was, it got me to where I needed to get. Push. If you don't, someone else will. Lift. If you don't, someone else will. Faster, 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 faster. I was in the living room, my feet tucked under the lip of the couch, firing through a set of 50 crunches, when I heard Ma's actual sleepy voice drift up and over the room. Don't kill yourself, she said. I've been so into my push-ups and sit-ups and all that, I hadn't even heard her come home. Where's the mat? She continued. I kept at it in my head. Push 25, 2, 3. Push 26, 2, 3. Push. Ma sighed. Boys, she said. I heard her slough into the kitchen and open the fridge. I finished my set, sprang to my feet, and felt the room spin. Black dots popped across my vision, and before I passed out, I dropped to the couch and sat there catching my breath. Water? Ma asked from the kitchen. Yes, I whisper-shouted, but she was already on her way to give it to me. Ma sat down next to me and put her head on my shoulder. She was so much smaller than me now, and I liked the way she sometimes leaned into me or hugged me, like she was excited. Not in a weird way, but with something I think might have been pride. She'd already kicked off her shoes, and she'd already changed into one of the 3 t-shirts she always wore around the house. I drank my water in 2 long gulps. Honey, you stink, Ma said, pulling away from me. Sorry, Gotta do my workouts, though, every morning. She rolled to the other side of the couch. Get off! You're going to make the cushions stink. Ma, I'm serious. She pushed my shoulder and laughed, and I rolled onto the floor. Come on, she continued. You'll ruin the rug. She leaned back on the arm of the couch and crossed one leg over the other. She could have fallen asleep right there. The bags under her eyes were prunes. Loose strands of hair sprang from her head like she'd pulled a wool hat off, and the static electricity still hung in the air around her. But despite her exhaustion, somehow she still always found a smile for me. What's the matter with you? She said, yawning. You look strange. Nothing, I said. She rubbed her face and squinted at me, and I knew her mind was working to put it all together, but she was so tired. I can trust you, right? She asked, still slouched in the corner of the couch. You'd tell me if something was the matter. Of course, I said quickly, even though there was a hell of a lot on my mind. But I didn't feel like telling her about any of it. I'm just going to rinse off, I said. It was going to be a 2-shower day. Then I got to hit the court. Coach is picking the starters this week. You'll make it, she said, as if fighting for a starting spot was MBD. As if it had just come to me because I wanted it, not because I had to fight for it. I left Ma slumped against the armrest and went straight to the bathroom. I got the water running hot first, then switched it to cold, just to fire up the senses and wake up. I still felt a little groggy from last night, and I was pissed at myself because after my workout, I wanted to get right to the court. I thought I had a real shot at being a starter. But next week was too important to coast through. I had to hit more three-pointers when we went around the world. I had to have the higher free throw percentage. English was so good, he didn't have to give up the ball. So if he did, I had to make sure he felt more comfortable giving me the ball. And that meant working harder to get open and, more importantly, making the shot when I got the ball. Because the scouts were coming. Of course, the stands were going to be filled, but a few of those seats at every game were the seats we were all playing for. Full ride to Michigan State. Full ride to UNC. My dad had college paid for because he'd gone through ROTC at City College, but I had to do even better. Butler, Notre Dame, Villanova, Wisconsin, Arizona, Duke. St. Springfield's son needed to go full ride, too. Scouts paved the way, and I had to show them who I was. I had to be a starter. And as I was trying to psych myself up for a day of drills down at Gooch, I stepped out of the bathroom, wrapped only in a towel, holding my stank-ass clothes in a wad, and nearly ran right into Ma. She held my jeans in one hand and my flask in the other. She jutted her chin at me. Quinn Marshall Collins, you tell me the truth this minute, and you start from the very beginning. She pinched her lips tight. Is this how you want the world to know you? Some kind of derelict who doesn't give a damn about his actions? I stuttered. It was the strangest thing. I'd never been caught before. It was like there was regular me, the one Ma smiled at and loved, the one I'd always been, and then this new guy, the one shivering in the hallway outside the bathroom, standing in his towel, wondering why Ma had gone looking through my room while I was in the shower. Can I just get dressed? Ma sniffed. You have 30 seconds. Then she turned and marched to the kitchen. I broke the world's record for throwing on sweats and busting back to the kitchen. She sat on one side of the little formica table, steam from her mug of tea rising up to her face as she stared out the window to the Barrows house next door. The flask lay askew beside the mug. She ran her hand over her eyes and then up over her forehead like a visor. You know, she said slowly, this stuff can kill you. I know you don't think so, but it can. Ma, I said, sitting in the chair across from her. Listen, she interrupted. When you act like this, when you sit around breaking the law, thinking it is okay, you embarrass me. You embarrass your brother, and you embarrass yourself. You have more important things to worry about, young man. The flask sat on the table between us, and she picked it up. She waved it gently. This is going in the garbage. Okay? Then I had to add, flat out lying. It was Guzzo's idea. But you took it from our house. I just checked. She'd never done that before. Plus, I only took a flask full after she'd emptied a glass or two from the bottle, and there was always a new bottle to replace the old one. And even if it was, she waved the flask again. Guzzo drank nearly the whole thing. Guzzo drank the alcohol. It was Guzzo's idea. You make it sound like you weren't there, Quinn, but you were. You were there. Maybe it was the alcohol still in my blood, but the way she said it, I was there, in the night. That hollowed-out, gutted feeling making me nervous and stupider than usual, like I couldn't find the simplest words. I saw Paul. I'm sorry. Not good enough. I'm sorry I stole the bourbon. I'm sorry I drank it with Guzzo and Dwyer. You talk about wanting to be somebody. You talk about basketball. You talk about making your family proud, but then you act like this? What do you think people are going to think of you now? Jesus, Ma, I said, it's not that big a deal. It was only one night. It won't happen again. She tapped the flask with her finger. Remember you said that. That it was only this one time. Don't let it happen again. And don't Jesus Ma me. I looked out the window. I'm just saying that I know it was dumb and I'm sorry. I didn't even have that much to drink, I swear. It's not about that, Quinn. Ma leaned forward and grabbed my hands. She waited until I stopped looking out the window and looked at her. It's about how the world looks at you, and when they do, who do you want them to see? What kind of a person do you want to be? Who do you think you are? You're the one your brother looks up to. You're a senior, Quinn. This is the year everyone looks to see what kind of man you want to become. I pulled my lips tight against my teeth to try to keep calm and not tear up like a baby. I didn't want to be a baby. I didn't want to be a jerk-off. I'm doing the best I can here, Ma continued. I'm on my own, honey, and I'm doing the best I can to help you, but I need your help to help your brother. She sipped her tea and watched me. I sat there like a mute because I didn't know what to say. I felt like an idiot. She sighed. I was going to ask you, but now I'm just telling you. Pick up Willie from his game today. The Cambies are bringing him. In fact, go see your brother's game. It means more to him if you're there than me anyway. So go see his game. She reached for her purse that hung on the back of her chair and pulled a few bills from her wallet. He looks up to you. Spend some time with him. Take him out for pizza after. Once basketball starts, we'll never see you. Take him out for lunch. So I did what I was told. And I put on some clean jeans and my light hoodie and took the bus over to the east side for Willie's game. Tough Will, who was known to sit down in the middle of his own soccer game, right there on the field, until his coach gave up and called in the sub. Tough Will spent most of his game sitting on the sidelines eating orange slices. When I got there, both teams were already warming up on either end of the field. I'd played soccer before I was in high school and loved it. For Tough Will, it was another story. It was only the warm-ups, and I could see him dragging his feet, not chasing anything or anyone anywhere. Just standing around and waiting for someone to pass him the ball. Get in there, man! I shouted. Will! Will! Get in there, man! He looked over at me and waved, totally oblivious to the rest of the players and balls around him. Still, I guess I inspired him because he turned and chased down a red and white ball and dribbled it a bit before taking a shot on net. It went wide left, but at least he ran after the ball. My phone started blowing up with texts, but Regina Canby had set up a folding chair beside a cooler, and she was waving me over, so I had to ignore the text because I sure as hell couldn't ignore her. She sat with a few other moms, and the dads who'd come to the game stood around in a circle a little ways behind them, under the boughs of the one large oak tree that gave this park its name. I chatted with Mrs. Canby at first, but then the game began, and I started cheering Willie and his team on, using that as an excuse to pull away as if I wanted to walk down the sidelines and see the action more clearly because my phone kept buzzing and buzzing in my pocket, and I wanted to see what was going on. Guzzo had texted "What's up" 10 times. Saturday, 12:53 p.m. to Guzzo. How's your head? Saturday, 12:53 p.m. from Guzzo. Fucking awful. Saturday, 12:54 p.m. to Guzzo. Bananas and Gatorade, man. Saturday, 12:54 p.m. from Guzzo. I'm puking water if I drink it. Saturday, 12:55 p.m. to Guzzo. Damn, you busted? Saturday, 12:55 p.m. from Guzzo. No. Saturday, 12:55 p.m. to Guzzo. Fuck, I am, and I'm not even hungover. Saturday, 12:57 p.m. from Guzzo. It's a shit show here. Saturday, 12:57 p.m. to Guzzo. What? Saturday, 12:58 p.m. from Guzzo. Paul's home is a big deal. Saturday, 12:58 p.m. to Guzzo. Is it about yesterday? At Jerry's? Saturday, 12:59 p.m. from Guzzo. I don't know. Yeah. Saturday, 1 p.m. to Guzzo. Damn. Saturday, 1:02 p.m. from Guzzo. I guess we are having a barbecue tomorrow. Saturday, 1:02 p.m. to Guzzo. What? Saturday, 1:03 p.m. from Guzzo. Yup, see you then. Tell your mom to bring that marshmallow pie. Saturday, 1:03 p.m. to Guzzo. She has to work, I think. Saturday, 1:04 p.m. from Guzzo. Nope, I already know she's coming. I hesitated and he wrote again. Saturday, 1:06 p.m. from Guzzo. Everybody coming. Got a bust. See you tomorrow. So something had to be up because the Galuzzo family never had people over. Or rather, they never invited people over. There were so many people coming and going from the house that it always seemed like a party, but they never officially organized anything. I tried him a few more times, but he didn't text back, so I gave up. I'd see him at the barbecue anyway, because of course I'd go. I always went, and wound up wolfing down Paul's famous burgers. But now I saw that face, Paul's, burning, a blood-red mask of rage. He'd been so focused on kicking the shit out of that guy. I'd seen him. Had he seen me? What if he had? I never felt nervous around Paul, and suddenly just thinking about him made me sweat. As I was going through all this, I tried to watch the game, but it was slow as all hell, and Will's team was terrible. Still, Will was playing left back, and he was actually running around and chasing the ball. Near the end of the first half, one of the players on the other team got around a couple of guys just over midfield and seemed like he had a clean break for a shot, but Will came out of nowhere and nailed a sweet slide tackle. The parents on the other side of the field started screaming like crazy, but Will's tackle had been legal, at least as I could see it, and that's what the referees thought too. And so when the first half ended, Will was the momentary hero, keeping the game more respectable because his team was only down 1-0. I found him and slapped him 5 over the heads of a few teammates in the huddle with his coach, and then I backed off. People always felt bad for me at games because of Dad, and Ma was always working, but I liked being on my own. I liked figuring out what I had to do and doing it. No one seemed to get that, and I didn't want to crowd Will either, so I let him be. His coach was thrilled and put him back in for the second half. Guzzo still didn't text back, and I went back and forth with Dwyer a few times, but eventually I put the phone away because it really was more fun to check out the game, and check out Will, especially. This might sound dumb to some people, but it's actually pretty cool having a little brother. I mean, he was a pain in the ass, and that I was here and not practicing over a gooch pissed me off, but watching him smash into the guys on the other team, watching the way he shook off his own pain, made me realize that I did the same thing. Twirl my fist like I was revving myself up. He had the same crooked smile. And once, when there was a pause in the action and he was close to me on the sidelines and he was hunched over with his hands on his knees, he looked over at me and nodded, and I knew he was saying thank you. Not because I'd shown up to watch him, but because I had shown up to watch him, he was playing harder, and he was loving it. And after the game, I didn't mind taking Tough Will over to Mother's Pizza. On the bus back to the west side, he kept asking me about the game and what his team could have done better. Scored a goal, I said. That would have helped. He rolled his eyes. Yeah, I know, but how? Your striker. He couldn't run. That was his problem. And when he had a shot, he hesitated. Can't hesitate. Like you, man. You were awesome today. I shook his shoulder and felt bad it was the only game I'd made it to all season. I wanted to be the guy who showed up, not the one who didn't. When we got to Mother's, it was slammed, like always. Mother sits on a corner, and the front door faces Spring Street, and the to-go window faces 20th Street. And while I usually just hit the to-go window, especially when I swung by at night, the line was jammed inside and outside. So I stuck Willie on the end of one of the two picnic tables and went inside to see if it moved any faster. It still took a while, and while I waited, I had to try to look everywhere else around the room except the one spot where I felt those eyes always watching me. That's why I preferred the to-go window. I couldn't see those eyes blazing into me. Those eyes, my dad's eyes. In the photo the pizza guys had up on the wall, two guys in greasy t-shirts with their arms up around my dad's shoulders. Dad, a pillar of stone, dressed like usual in his Class A blues. The rest of the photos were of people in the pizza shop, but not the one with Dad. He'd gotten the guys to make pizza for the soup kitchen at St. Mary's. His photo looked down on me. When I was finally up near the front, I felt a tug at my arm. I was about to turn back to Willie to tell him that he might have lost our seats, but it wasn't Willie at my arm. It was Jill. She pulled close to me so the people behind us couldn't hear. "Hey, Quinn, you mind getting an extra slice?" she asked. Her hair fell in two blonde-brown curtains around her face, and I could smell her shampoo as she looked up at me conspiratorially. And when a girl looks at you like that, all you can say is, "Whatever you want. I'll do anything for you. Is there anything else you want?" "Yeah," I somehow managed to say instead. "Yeah, you mind?" She grinned. "No, yeah, no." I laughed, like a moron. The thing about slices at Mother's is that they are huge, so she stuck around to help carry it all outside. She offered some money, but I waved her off, because I had it good at Mother's. I grabbed us all Cokes, too, because the guys at Mother's always gave St. Springfield's son a major discount. And yeah, well, I was the kind of guy who just kept taking those free Cokes, no questions asked, like I actually deserved them, or something. "How are you planning on carrying this all out there on your own anyway?" she asked. I had 2 giant slices and 2 Cokes by the necks of the bottles. She had 2 slices and a Coke. "Guess I was just waiting for you," I said. She frowned, but in a cute way, like it was really a smile. "Oh yeah, I bet you were." Willie had managed to save 2 seats, but when he saw us, he got up and offered Jill his. "Please," he said. She tried to protest, but he wouldn't let her. He stood at the end of the picnic table and glanced back and forth at us while he shoved pizza into his face. "One of us is what you'd call a gentleman," he informed us. "He's hilarious," Jill said to me. Now, what kind of world did I live in where my 12-year-old brother was the cooler flirt than me? "Yeah," I said. "I'm supposed to be his role model, but maybe it's the other way around." "Nah," she said. "I bet he learned all this from someone. But this someone needs to sit down today, huh? I'm old and broken. He's got his whole life ahead of him." "Yeah," Jill said. "And you're hungover, right?" "I knew it!" Willie yelped. "I knew you were going to a party last night." "Oops," Jill said. I pointed at Willie. "Between us. Got me?" "Oh, yeah," Willie said. "Until I need the ammo." "Willie?" "Will, please." Jill laughed. She put her hand on Willie's wrist, and his face changed. His whole body probably blushed as deep red as his face. He gave her the dopiest smile. Had I looked like that when she'd asked me to get her a slice? Jesus. But Jill didn't mind. "Will," she said, "don't get him in trouble, because then it will be my fault, and he'll never speak to me again." I stared at Will, and he knew exactly what I was saying with my eyebrows. "Don't fuck this up, dude." "Whatever," Willie said. "I'm only kidding." Willie and I shared the extra slice as Jill and I talked about the party. I tried to get a sense of whether or not she and English had hooked up, but I wasn't going to ask outright, because it really was none of my damn business. She was being super flirty, but not in the way I wanted her to mean it. This had happened before. Sometimes I got the feeling she thought of me more as a brother. But no dude wants to be thought of as a brother when he is sitting across from a girl who is not his sister and who makes his stomach flip when she says his name. While we were talking, though, things were getting a little heated over by the corner. A couple of guys had walked up to two other guys in line and started barking. They kept at it to the point where the rest of us outside couldn't even hear ourselves. People started yelling around them, and when one of the guys pushed one of the guys in line, they broke into punches. I jumped up and stuffed Willie into the seat behind me. People yanked out their phones calling the cops, but somebody must have called the cops already because the berry lights flashed down the block. The guys in the fight tried to swing a few more punches, but people in the crowd had pulled them apart and locked them in armholds. One cop car pulled up and then another, and everything happened so quickly we all just stood around watching like dumb idiots until the cops had grabbed the four guys who'd been fighting, pinned them to the hoods of the two cars, and cuffed them. I, of course, was back at the night before, where I'd seen Paul arrest the kid outside Jerry's. But this was different. Another cop car pulled up and then another, then all 8 cops started asking the crowd to disperse, only holding a few people back to ask questions. This kind of thing happened all the time at Mother's. It sat right between neighborhoods, and kids from one block might beef with kids from another or some other shit, and while I tried to stay out of it, it was impossible not to watch it explode right in front of you. The crowd outside Mother's was white, black, Latino, Asian, just like Springfield. The 4 guys being cuffed were white. The cops, almost all of them were white, but 2 of them were black. It was impossible not to think about this as Paul slamming that black kid into the sidewalk the night before replayed in my mind. It wasn't like watching one of my brother's video games or a movie. You hear bone. You see real blood, and you taste the rust of it, and it makes you sick. I broke into a sweat like I might puke. I turned to Willie and Jill. Should we get out of here? More people began to shout at the cops from the crowd. I was done with this. We'll walk you home, I told Jill. We busted back down the street away from the scene and took the long way around the neighborhood to Jill's house. I could tell Jill was as distracted as I was, as if we both had private conversations going on in the back of our minds, and we used Willie sandwiched between us as the focal point of conversation. But when we got to her house, she said over Willie's head, "There's a barbecue at my cousin's tomorrow. You must be going." Yeah, I said. Weird, right? A sudden party? She looked at me, and I realized we might not have been having private conversations in our minds the whole way home. They might have been the same one. Yeah, I said. I don't know, but I think I have an idea what this is about. Me too, she said. As she jogged up her front steps, something ugly and awful was forming in my mind, but I couldn't quite find the right words for it. Or I didn't want to. I wasn't sure. Sunday.
Rashad. Sunday. I slept late and woke up to an empty room. Silence. No one. So nice. Sunday TV is just as bad as Saturday TV, so I left it off and laid there in the cold space staring at the wall, thinking about everything. I was supposed to have been at Jill's party on Friday. Me, English, Shannon, and Carlos. 3-piece and fries. I was supposed to be all up on Tiffany Watts, giving her the business, because even though I was Soldier Boy when I was in school, everybody knew I was nice with the moves. Rhythm ain't never been an issue for me. I was the kid Spoonie made dance in front of his friends when we were younger. Showed him the latest steps that I picked up from music videos. I owned the block party dance contests. So Jill's party, like every party, was my time to two-step without it being a march. My time to be at ease and let the soul seep back into this soldier. Damn shame I didn't make it. Instead, some big-ass cop decided to have a fist party on my face. You know, normal stuff. No biggie. I'm just a punk-ass kid. I have no rights. Just got body slammed for no reason. Just got my life threatened while lying flat on the sidewalk. A broken nose, broken ribs, and a knee in the back is way more exciting than fine-ass girls checking for me after they finish checking for English. Fuck. Knock, knock. The door opened and there was Clarissa pushing my lunch cart in. "Good afternoon, Rashad," she said. She had one of those voices that no matter what was nice. Like, it could never sound mean. You know how some people have those voices? Like kindergarten teachers or librarians. "How we feeling?" she asked, and I was momentarily confused by the "we" she was referring to. "I'm fine," I said, forcing a small smile. "Good. Make sure you try to get yourself up today. You can't just lie there on your back. Also, I need you to blow into this as hard as you can." She held up a strange-looking plastic thing with a hole sticking out of it. "What is it?" "It's called an incentive spirometer. Because of your ribs, you're going to do everything you can not to cough, but you need to cough. You got to make sure you're getting all the nasty stuff out of your lungs, because if it all stays in, it might turn into pneumonia, and we don't want that." Then she broke it all down to me as if I was a child, which I appreciated because I had never heard of a spirometer before. Luckily, it was a simpler process than the name suggests. All I had to do, a few times every hour, was breathe in through the tube slowly, hold it, and then breathe out. As she set the spirometer on the side table by my bed, she announced, "For lunch today, we've got chicken tenders and fries and a small salad," while setting the tray down. Then she went through the routine of checking my vitals, blood pressure, and whatever else. Whoever really knows what all those machines and stuff are anyway? I just know the one they put on my arm is for my blood pressure. But who, besides old people, even knows what blood pressure is? "Just make sure I ain't dying," was what I was thinking as the cuff tightened around my arm. Once she left, I got myself up, which was way more painful than I thought it would be. Who the hell knew broken ribs could make everything hurt? Or maybe it was that everything I did made the broken ribs hurt. Seemed like even blinking was painful. I waddled slowly to the bathroom so I could handle my business, the post-sleep pee, which was interrupted by another knock at the door. This time, it was my family. Of course. "Rashad?" my mother called through a crack in the door before pushing it open. I had just flushed and washed my hands while performing the strange task of looking at my bruised and broken face, but only in glimpses. That's all I could take. A few seconds at a time. 3 seconds, then back to the sink. Then back to the mirror for 3 more seconds before darting my eyes over to the paper towels. Anything longer than that made me uncomfortable. Anyway, I was making my way back to the bed when my mother and father came in dressed in their Sunday spiffs. Behind them, even more Sunday, as in Sunday himself, as in Jerome Johnson, as in Pastor Jerome Johnson. "Son, Pastor's here to see you," my father said as I eased back into bed, flashing my ashy butt at everybody, including God. They brought the pastor? I sort of fell quickly onto the mattress and whipped my legs around until they were on the bed. Pathetic. My mother helped me adjust, fluffing the pillow behind my head and pulling the sheet over me, up to my chin, which was way too far. She kissed my forehead and stared at me as if she was trying to recognize the kid beneath the bruises and bandages. "You okay?" "I'm fine," I said, short. She nodded, then glanced at the food tray. She lifted the plate cover, the condensation dripping all over my chicken tenders. Damn! Soggy chicken tenders suck. "You haven't eaten." "It just got here. I just woke up," I said in a take-it-easy tone. She kissed my forehead again, then leaned back so I could get a clear shot of my father, three-piece suited and shiny shoed. And the minister, Pastor Johnson, dressed in an oversized suit, a gold chain with a gold cross lying perfectly in the middle of his fat satin tie. In his hand, the Bible. What else? "How you feeling, Rashad?" the pastor asked. Everybody was asking that, as if I was ever going to tell them the truth. Nobody wanted to hear the truth, even though everybody already knew what it was. I felt violated. That's the only way I can put it. Straight up violated. And now, to make it worse, I had to have church. Well, sort of church. I had to have prayer. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't have a problem with a good prayer. I mean, I believe in God. At least I think I do. I just wondered where God was when I was being mocked by that cop. And I knew that's what the pastor had come to tell me, that God was there, that God was always there, which, to me, is the wrong thing to say, because if he or it or whatever was there and didn't do nothing, then that would make God my enemy, because he let it happen. I would much rather Pastor Johnson say that God wasn't there, that he was busy, that he turned his back just for a second to check on somebody else, than that asshole officer snuck right by him and got me. But nope. Son, I just stopped by to tell you that God is with you. He's always with you, the pastor started predictably. And everything happens for a reason. Reason? This felt like a good time for me to grab my spirometer, because I was in need of a deep breath. I mean, seriously, what reason could there have been for this? Let me guess. I was too good looking and needed an extra bump on my nose? A reminder that only English Jones runs the school? Now we're gonna offer up a prayer for your healing, son, believing that God's gonna mend you, the pastor said. Let's all bow our heads and look to the Lord. My mother and father lowered their heads and closed their eyes. I didn't do either. Kept mine open and my head up, looking at the three of them, wondering if any of this mattered. I knew it mattered to them, my parents, and maybe that should have been enough for me to participate. But did it matter to me? I'm not so sure. The prayer was long and dramatic, full of the preachy punches in between each point. The pastor mentioned how Jesus was persecuted, and Saul was made blind, and Job was tested, and David beat Goliath, My mother followed right behind the pastor, accompanying his rhythmic prayer with hallelujah whispers, and my father's manly but, I guess, godly grunts, all eventually, finally leading to an amen. Amen. Spoonie stood in the doorway, nodding his head and clapping his hands, a sarcastic look on his face. Man, was I happy to see him. Ma was too. Dad, well, not so much. Pastor, you remember my oldest son, Randolph, he said, caught off guard. Yes, of course I do. The pastor reached out and shook Spoonie's hand. Ain't seen you down at the church in a while. That's 'cause I can't afford to come. Spoonie, my mother gasped. Sorry, he said, shrugging and smirking at me. No, that's okay, Pastor Johnson said kindly. Nothing wrong with the boy having a mind of his own. God gave him that. Spoonie just looked at Dad like, see? Well, listen, I better be going. But we're going to keep you lifted up in prayer, Rashad. And we're going to add you to the blessing list for the sick and shut in. But I'm not sick or shut in. I'm beat down. Is there a list for that? But I didn't say that. I was hoping Spoonie would do some kind of Big Brother ESP thing and say it for me. Thank you so much for coming, Pastor, my mother said, clenching Pastor Johnson's hand. My dad gave him a firm handshake and a tight-lipped nod, and the churchman headed out. 5 seconds couldn't have gone by before Spoonie sat gingerly on the side of the bed and grabbed the remote. Come on, man, it's Sunday. Ain't nothing on but reruns of what we just experienced, I joked. Oh, there's something else on, trust me, Spoonie said pointedly. You know, you don't always have to be so damn disrespectful, Dad started in on Spoonie with a bark, settling into a chair on the other side of the room. Cursing, right after the pastor left. Tisk, tisk, tisk. Spoonie ignored him and turned the TV on. He nodded up to the screen. Check it out. I looked up at the glowing screen, and there it was. There I was, on the freaking news. Again, this is footage that was taken from a smartphone Friday night of a police officer shoving a young man through the door of Jerry's Corner Mart on 4th Street. As you can see, the officer already has the young man subdued. He doesn't seem to be resisting, but is still slammed to the ground, where the officer proceeds with what looks to be unnecessary force. Jerry's has experienced a string of robberies, but as of now, we are uncertain as to whether or not this was another one of those cases. We attempted to contact Jerry's management for a comment, but to no avail. The Springfield PD has also declined making a statement at this time. What we do know is that the young man in this video is 16-year-old Rashad Butler of West Springfield. We'll keep you updated as we learn more. My mother's mouth gaped. What? I mean, how? Spoonie, how'd they get my name? I stared at the TV in disbelief. I told you, Lord brother, there are always witnesses. Barry kept checking online all night. YouTube, Facebook, everything. And eventually the video surfaced. So we sent it to the news, told them who you were. At this, my dad lost it. I mean, seriously, have you lost your damn mind? Are them things on your head affecting your thinking? Rashad doesn't need this kind of attention, Spoonie. He doesn't need all this craziness. None of us do. Spoonie jumped to his feet. You think me sending it to the news is crazy? The crazy part is what happened to Shad. What's happening all over this country. You of all people should know that. My father glared at Spoonie, and I mean he held it there, as if there was, in fact, some kind of father-son ESP thing, and he was beaming the cuss out of the century straight to my brother's brain. Then, like he always did, Dad stormed out of the room, followed by Spoonie throwing words at his back. Yeah, run away as usual. Spoonie, Ma shouted. My throat dried. My stomach boiled. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I mean, it was me, but it wasn't. But it was. I didn't know how or what to feel. Like, how could I be that boy? A victim? Me. It was just, I don't know, surreal. But we kept watching as the story looped. Sunday, aside from being a whack TV show day, is also apparently a slow news day. Every few minutes, the footage of me being crushed under the weight of the cop played. The news person talking about the string of robberies and not being able to get a comment from Jerry's management or the police department. Then a picture of me dressed in my ROTC uniform flashed across the screen. I glared at Spoonie. Where'd they get that? I asked, already knowing the answer. Man, listen, I had to make sure we controlled as much of the narrative as possible. If I ain't send that photo in, they would have dug all through the internet for some picture of you looking crazy, Spoonie said. Trust me, man, I've seen it time and time again. I was pissed about the photo, and to be honest, a little embarrassed by it. But I knew Spoonie had a point. I would have hated for them to put up some picture of me hanging with Carlos, posing with my middle fingers up, even though, well, never mind. The story played over and over and over again, like watching a movie in virtual reality where it doesn't really seem like you, like it's real, but you can feel every blow, every break. You can taste blood. You can smell the officer's breath. And that was hard for me, to see myself like that. They kept saying, it was a developing story. As more unfolds, as we learn more. Cut it off, I finally said. We need to keep up with how it develops, Spoonie said. Cut it off, Spoon! I reached for the remote myself and was instantly reminded that my ribs were broken. Ugh! My mother lifted off her seat, ready to spring into mommy mode. Spoonie quickly handed me the clicker. Okay, he said apologetically. Take it easy. My bad, man. It's just, I'm fine, I said hard, shooting down whatever reason he was about to deliver. I turned the TV off. I just don't want to watch it no more. The truth is, I wasn't mad at Spoonie. I wasn't. As a matter of fact, he did exactly what I expected him to do. I just didn't want to keep watching it. My mother, trying to cut the tension, began digging in her church bag, which was way bigger than her normal bag. The church bag had to be big enough to fit her Sunday service survival kit, her Bible, some candy, and all the sins of our family. Oh, Rashad, I forgot. I brought the stuff you asked for. The stuff I asked for was my phone and phone charger. My mother was given the duffel bag with my ROTC uniform and phone after I and it were released into her custody. But more importantly, I wanted my art supplies, sketchbook, and pencils. That's all I really needed. That was my hospital survival kit. She plugged my phone in the wall and put the sketchbook and pencils on the roller tray table next to the chicken tenders I now wasn't going to be eating. and as soon as my phone had enough juice to power on, the damn dog started barking, non-stop. Let me explain. Me and Carlos had this stupid joke that whenever we were going to a party, we would set our text message alerts to a crazy sound effect. Not for any real reason. I mean, originally it was so we'd always know where each other was, or be able to find a phone if any of us lost one. But at a party, who would be able to hear it over the music? See? Stupid. But we kept doing it because it was our thing. A tradition. Like, good luck or something. This week, Carlos picked a dog bark, just because he thought it would be funny, or dare I say cool, to tell a girl that there was something in his pants barking. I mean, it was kind of funny, but also so whack. Then he challenged me and said that he could get a girl with that bark line before I could. Truth is, I wasn't even going to try. But I played along and changed my alert anyway. And now that my phone had enough battery to turn on, the dog was barking crazy. Hand me that, I said to Spoonie, who was frowning at all the stupid noise. I checked my messages. Friday, 4:43 p.m. from Spoonie. Shaw, you still coming to get money? Friday, 5:13 p.m. from Spoonie. Question mark, question mark, question mark. WTF. Friday, 5:21 p.m. from Los. Yo, be at my crib by 7. Friday, 5:22 p.m. from Los. And watch how many girls I get with that dog joke. Friday, 5:23 p.m. from Los. You know girls love dogs, dude. Friday, 5:35 p.m. from Los. Where you at? Friday, 5:51 p.m. from Spoonie. Where you at? Friday, 6:05 p.m. from Ma. Hey, Spoonie and Carlos called here looking for you. I called, but it keeps going to voicemail. Call me. Friday, 7 p.m. from Los. Dude, you're killing me. Where the fuck are you? Friday, 8:47 p.m. from Los. I don't know where you are, but I'm out. If you caught a ride with somebody else, you could have told me, bro. Damn. Unless you with a girl. Then I understand. But I know you not. I'll catch you at the party. Bring your best game. Friday, 10:03 p.m. from English. Shad, you here? Me, Shannon, Los looking for you. Los tripping. LMAO. Saturday, 1:01 p.m. from Los. Where were you? Of course it got shut down. Shit was bananas. Saturday, 4:26 p.m. from Shan. Yo, Los is tired of texting you, so now I'm texting you. You good? Saturday, 4:41 p.m. from Shan. Where are you? Saturday, 4:49 p.m. from Los. English just told me Barry said you in the hospital. Saturday, 4:51 p.m. from English. You in the hospital? WTF? Saturday, 4:52 p.m. from Shan. Yo, you in the hospital, bro? English said some shit about the cops. Sunday, 12:11 p.m. from Los. Yo, you on the news? Crazy! Crazy indeed. I scrolled through, reading them all before sending quick responses to the three of them, Shannon, Carlos, and English, letting them know that I was okay. Well, I said a little more than that. Sunday, 12:17 p.m. to Los, Shan, English. I'm good, fellas. Got accused of stealing from Jerry's and the cop on duty roughed me up. Broke my nose and some ribs, but I'm okay. I see he's got his lifeline back, Dad grumbled, coming back into the room, looking calmer than when he'd left. Yeah, so he should be back to normal in no time, Ma said, trying to be positive. I don't know about that, Spoonie muttered. Thankfully, my father didn't hear him, because I wasn't sure I could take another blow-up, so I turned the TV back on quick. A risk, I know, but I had to do something as it looked like my folks were settling in for the afternoon, and guess what saved the day? Football. Ah, football, Spoonie said. Another one of America's favorite pastimes, besides baseball and beating the brains out of... Chill, I ordered. Honestly, I just wanted to take it easy for the rest of the day. I didn't want to hear Spoonie preach about how hard it is to be black, or my father preach about how young people lack pride and integrity, making us easy targets. I didn't even want to think about the preacher preaching about how God is in control of it all, or my mother, my sweet, sweet mother, caught in the middle of it all. The referee who blows the whistle but is way too nice to call foul on anyone. That's her. She just wants me to be okay. That's it and that's all. So if football was going to be the thing that took our minds off the mess for at least a few hours, then fine with me. Let's cheer and scream and cuss at the TV, not at each other. When the game was over, my family left. And at that moment, I thanked the God I hoped was there. Back to an empty, peaceful room. Just me and my spirometer. Which, by the way, was also pretty painful to use. I mean, to inhale slowly felt like sucking in shards of glass. Yeah, not awesome. After the game, the news came on. The first story was about a kid accused of stealing from a store on the west side. The footage of me being thrown to the ground. Again. 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 My picture. My name. Again. And now, a new development. The officer's name. Officer Paul Galuzzo. And his face on the screen.
Quinn. I stayed home with Willie Saturday night, and we watched World War Z, and then had a Mario Kart marathon until I felt bug-eyed and useless. It was good to escape into his world for a while, because after we walked Jill home, I was still stuck in my head, and it wasn't fair to Willie. But Sunday was different. Ma came home, napped for a couple of hours, made her marshmallow pie that everyone in the world loves but me, because marshmallows taste like little chunks of chewy soap. And then the three of us went down the block to the Galuzzos. We arrived late. The house was already packed. A couple of the younger neighborhood kids sat on the stairs that overlooked the front hall and the living room. Each one had a hyper-colored plastic gun, and they pretended to shoot the group of guys in the living room watching the Pats play the Broncos on TV. It was the afternoon game, but it was already in the second quarter. They were screaming at what should have been a pass interference that hadn't been called. "Boys!" Ma yelled into the room. I almost laughed at how quickly the room full of grown men snapped to attention when they heard Ma. A moment passed, then Guzzo's dad shouted back, "Marshmallow pie!" Everyone cheered. "Nice to see you too, Richie," Ma said. We walked into the kitchen and she put the pie on the counter, Mrs. Galuzzo hugging us all hello. Out the window I could see the small backyard, the porch. It was packed too. It looked like half the neighborhood had shown up. Willie scrambled off to find some kids his age down in the basement where they usually played video games, and I headed outside. But I gotta admit, I felt weird. The Galuzzos had always been my second home, but as I moved through the kitchen toward the back porch, I felt oddly slow and awkward, like I was wading through a pool of water. As soon as I stepped onto the porch, I saw him. Paul. My stomach clenched. He was flipping burgers at the grill. A red bandana tied up over his head, ratty t-shirt, even in this cool November weather. Guzzo stood right beside him. Two brothers, side by side. Man, I'd never really taken in how huge they were. Like they could have squatted, pitched forward, and put their knuckles in the dirt, and they'd be the linemen I just saw wearing Pats and Broncos uniforms. They waved, and I waved back, but was instantly wondering if Guzzo had said anything to his brother about the other night. It bugged me not knowing. I wasn't sure if I was supposed to keep quiet about it, or if I was supposed to head over and slap Paul in the back. It did feel like this party was thrown together all of a sudden for him. Why else were we all there? Paul didn't live here, and yet he stood there at the grill like he was at the helm or something, and the whole party radiated out in front of him. Paul prodded the burgers, and I saw that Jill was on the porch too. She was sitting on the railing, leaning against the post in the corner, watching Dwyer shoot hoops in the driveway. I joined her in the corner, sitting on the other railing, facing her and the yard behind her, where I could see Guzzo nudging Paul and pointing at me. "You think you all really have a chance this year?" Jill asked me, nodding toward the basketball. Of course she'd go there first. That was all anybody wanted to talk about. "Everyone else does," I said. She turned and looked at me. "That make you nervous?" "I keep hearing this voice in the back of my head," I said, hoping I didn't sound like a freaking crazy person. "It's pushing me, like go, go, go. But what I really hear is, don't fuck it up." "Coach putting pressure on you?" she asked. That wasn't even half of it. Coach Carney and his plans were drilled into me. We'd had our warm-up practices the week before. The first serious preseason practices began on Monday. Everyone knew we had a great team this year. People were even talking about it in the press, wanting to know how far we'd go, semifinals, finals. But all we cared about was who was going to be a starter. That's who the scouts would focus on, the guys with serious playing time. But it wasn't the team that bothered me, it was the press. I'd already seen Coach Carney doing interviews left and right, getting all excited like some clown at the carnival. I was sure we'd see more of them, too. It had been a long time since we'd had a team with a shot at being ranked #1 in the state. And even though there were only 15 players, 3 coaches, and a part-time trainer, it felt like we were chasing the trophy for thousands of people. But right then, I decided I was only going to concentrate on one person, Jill. So I just said, "Not too bad." And she nodded. And it was kind of impossible not to watch the light shift in the highlights in her hair. There were other people on the porch, but nobody was listening to us. "So here's something, I don't know, weird. You know how the cops came to the party the other night?" she said. "Yeah." "Well, no one got busted. The cops broke up the party, shook a few guys down looking for pot, but not finding any, and they just made me send everyone away, made me stand there in the hall and watch everyone leave. They made me call my parents. It was so embarrassing." She leaned in closer. "But what was worse, they stood there in the front hall looking at me, waiting for my folks to come home after everyone else had left, and one of them, I don't even know his name, but he obviously knew I was Polly's cousin. He kept looking at me like he was disgusted. Finally, he pointed at me and said, 'Don't fuck this up for your family.'" "Did you get in any kind of trouble?" "No," Jill said skeptically. "I thought he was going to call Polly, but he didn't. He just said that, waited for my parents, and when they got home, he left. Nothing else happened. It was just, like I said, weird." Mr. Galuzzo pushed open the screen door to yell out to Paul, "Hey, it's almost halftime. We got a room full of guys going to come running out here for burgers soon." Just as Dad shouting to him seemed to pull the whole yard closer, pulled me closer to him. I looked past Jill's shoulder to Guzzo and Paul. They were still at the grill, Paul with the spatula in one hand. "I get a day off and all you do is put me to work," he yelled back to his dad. He laughed. "Don't worry," he said, raising his hand in the air, the spatula his scepter. "I got this." Paul was famous for his burgers. He made them himself, and even while the burger itself was still juicy, the bits of onion inside stayed nice and crunchy. They were my favorite, better than anything Ma ever made. Mr. Galuzzo poked his head back in the house to tell folks that the burgers would be ready in a minute. But someone shouted to him to come see some play Brady made, and he left the porch and let the door slam behind him. "I think I know why they couldn't call Paul," I said to Jill. She gave me a go-on look, then added carefully, "Yeah, I saw something on the news." "I saw it happen." "What?" Jill bent forward and grabbed my wrist. I could hear the rubbery echo of the ball pounding in the driveway, the chatter from some of the neighbors in the backyard, the rattle of a bag filled with bottles being moved through the kitchen inside. I shifted closer to her on the railing. "Me and Guzzo and Dwyer were at Jerry's before your party," I told her, voice low. "I saw it. I saw Paul and that kid." "It was Rashad, Quinn. That's who Paul arrested. You know Rashad? He goes to our school. He's tight with English and those guys." "Fuck," I said. In fact, as soon as she said it, I could picture him hanging with English in the halls. ROTC dude, right? Shit. I felt like such an ass. I'd quickly convinced myself I had no idea who that kid with Paul was that night. And yeah, there were like 1,000 kids in each grade at school or whatever, but I did know him, or know of him, really. I'd seen him, Rashad, in that uniform, and it had made me think of my dad wearing his own at college. How my dad had looked proud in all those pictures. Jill cocked her head in disbelief. "You all just watched it go down?" "Guzzo and Dwyer were waiting in the alley, but I was there." I glanced around all paranoid, making my voice even lower. It was ugly. I don't know what Rashad did, but Paul kicked the shit out of him. I heard someone talking about it earlier, Jill said, scooching closer. They said he was resisting arrest? I guess. Did Paul, see you or anything? I hesitated. I don't know, I said. It felt weird to talk about any of this, as if by mentioning it at all, I was betraying Paul. I looked over to him and Guzzo, as if reading their faces might tell me what they were thinking, or whether Guzzo had said anything. I don't think he saw me, I said, turning back to Jill. I doubt it. Did Guzzo? What? Tell him? We were hunched so close together at this point that when I heard my name shouted out, it felt like someone dropped an ice cube down the back of my shirt. Hey, Quinn! It was Paul. Why don't you quit hitting on my cousin and come help me serve these burgers? I froze. The timing scared the hell out of me. It was as if he knew I'd just been talking about him. Jill spun around and yelled, Go flip your own burgers, Paul! What does that even mean? He asked. He and Guzzo laughed. I don't know, Jill said, turning back to me, but better than saying nothing. Jill never took shit. Never let anyone get the jump on her. I always figured it was because she was used to being the only girl in a huge group of guys. There were 11 Galuzzo cousins, and she was the only female. And she just wouldn't let them tease her, or if they did, she decided long ago that she sure as hell was going to make it through the gauntlet regardless. I, however, wasn't as used to it. In fact, I must have looked stupid with nerves, because her eyes stayed glued to me as I got up and told her I'd catch up with her later, and as I turned, she smiled, and I felt the air leave me in a rush because I wanted to take her by the hand and get the hell out of there, but I couldn't. Quinn! Paul again. Then Guzzo. Quinn! Then Guzzo began a slow clap, and he and Paul chanted my name louder and louder as I crossed over to them. And I was sure even folks in the neighborhood who weren't already at the party could hear them. Dude, Guzzo said when I reached them. You have no chance. Like you know anything about chances. Damn right, Paul said, grinning at me. Shut up, Guzzo said. Paul ignored him. He had a bottle of beer in his left hand, and he held out that fist to bump knuckles with me, and I did. What's up, Quinn? He said. You don't say hello anymore? He took a swig of beer and wiped his mouth on the sleeve of his t-shirt. That's when I noticed his right fist was stuffed into a bucket of ice water on the grill shelf beside him. All casual. Friggin' hell, he had scabs all over his knuckles. Like nursing his wounds from Friday night, right there in front of everybody at the barbecue was NBD. What's up? I asked. He tossed the empty beer bottle into a cardboard box near his feet. Hold this, he said, handing me a faded plastic tray. He squeezed the juice from a couple of burgers with a spatula, sending flames up and around them. I know the O'Reillys like them dried out, he said. He pressed again, charring them more. Make sure they know which ones are theirs. He pulled his swollen fist from the ice bucket, flexed the fingers, then stuck it back in. Seriously, man, he said to me. Were you ever going to get your ass over here? It's a party, I said. People mingle. I just got here. Jesus, what's the matter with you? Nothing's the matter, Guzzo snapped. Why are you getting defensive? What are you talking about? Look, Paul interrupted. He cut the air between us with the spatula. A drop of grease landed on my t-shirt. He pulled his wet hand from the bucket and pinched at the spot, pulling off as much of the grease as he could. What the hell's the matter with you two? Nothing, I said, but I wasn't sure. I kept trying to read his face or Guzzo's for some sign. Still not knowing if Guzzo had said anything to Paul was starting to eat away at me. Guzzo wouldn't meet my eyes. But Paul did. Listen, he said. I'm not kidding. You guys need to have a mind meld or something. If you keep bitching at each other like this into the season, you aren't going to play well, you're going to suck. So strap on a pair and get your shit together. I nodded, and Gutso did too. It was always like that. Paul would give us marching orders and we'd march, especially with basketball. Way I see it, Paul continued, if the whole team moves off the ball more, and if you can get English to give it up more, you all have a real shot. Everyone else relies on 2, maybe 3 players at most. You've got 8 or 9 solid players, right? English has been working on his range, I said. He's going to shoot all he can. He's going to break his record from last year. You all should, Paul said. That's my point. He started scraping burgers up off the grill and dropping them on the platter. They better have the fixings ready in the kitchen, Gutso said. Why don't you go find out? Paul said. Gutso was about to protest, but Paul spoke over him. Seriously, Paul said before shouting out, Burgers up! Gutso jogged ahead while I waited for Paul to slide the last burgers onto the pile. As soon as I did, I started to follow Gutso, but Paul grabbed my arm. His blue eyes were red-rimmed and tired. I'm going to have a few days free, he told me. We should work on your footwork. You come by after practice tomorrow, too. I'll be here. Yeah, I said. But he kept holding my arm longer than he needed to until it was obviously awkward. You all right? He asked. You seem a little uptight. What's up? Burgers, I said, way too chipper. Nobody wants them cold. I could feel his eyes on me as I carried them up to the kitchen, and I could still feel the pressure of his fingertips like a ring around my elbow. I made a point of eating in the living room with the guys watching the game. The game was a good distraction, a way to pay attention to something else, to try to take my mind off Paul squinting at me, his gauging me as he'd been talking to me at the grill. He'd been all smiles, all business as usual, and despite the swollen hand in the bucket and the shredded knuckles, he'd been waving to people across the yard like there wasn't a damn thing on his mind other than serving them their burgers. And while I kept seeing Paul's Popeye arms at the back of Rashad's neck, nobody else seemed to be wondering about why the Galutzos felt a sudden need for a party. No one else was talking about the fact that Paul was in the news. Instead, they all yelled at the TV when the Pats blew a 25-yard pass with another flag for holding. They yelled again after the Pats recovered from a sack and on 3rd and 18 scored a touchdown. I yelled along with them. It was just easier. Gutso came in and out of the room a few times, but it felt like he was keeping his distance from me, hovering around his brother, when Paul would come in to check on the score. But the game wasn't distracting enough. When I tried to swallow the burger down, it felt like I had an animal trying to crawl up and out of my throat. So after a while, I wandered into the kitchen, wondering where Jill was, and I found her there fighting with her mom in the corner. They were going at it about Friday night's party right there in front of everyone. I'm not kidding, young lady, Jill's mom said, cramping a cigarette between 2 fingers and waving it in front of Jill. This is serious. The Rolls are still screaming at us because of the last party. This is it. You've really blown it this time. All right, I got it, Jill said, standing like she was ready to fight or run, whichever she needed. Can we not do this here? Her mother leaned back and drew a big breath as if to collect herself. And one more thing, she finally said. You can't expect Polly to just be there to save you all the time. Oh my God, I don't! Mrs. Galuzzo had been half-heartedly rinsing off a few of the now empty platters with my mother, but when she heard Paul's name, she swung around. You do, Jill's mom continued, and he's got bigger and better things to worry about than his little cousins screwing around. You're right, he does, Jill said under her breath. But everyone heard her. Hey, Mrs. Galuzzo interrupted, her face going all tight and pissed. You watch what you say next. She stepped away from the sink. Everyone else in the room went quiet, and Jill had gone deep red. You might have a little respect. Today. In my house. Today. The platter in her hand shook, and my mother put a hand on Mrs. Galuzzo's back to calm her. That's what I was trying to say, Jill's mom said, stepping closer to Mrs. Galuzzo. I mean, he has an important job. She fumbled for more words, then turned back to Jill. See what you've done? You apologize to your Aunt Rita right now. I'm sorry, Jill said automatically. You're always sorry, her mom added bitterly before sucking on her cigarette. Honey, Mrs. Galuzzo said to Jill, her face softening. Paul has a hard job, and sometimes he has to make tough decisions. All I'm saying is please respect that and who he is. Yes, Jill said, but she wasn't looking at Mrs. Galuzzo. She was looking at Paul. Paul, who was looking in through the screen door. Thanks, Ma, he said. Oh, Polly, Mrs. Galuzzo said, whirling around. She looked like she wanted to say more, but didn't have the words for it. And as we were all waiting to hear what she would say next, we heard something else, the TV. It was turned up so loud for the game that when there was a break, and the news anchor's voice set up the teaser for the evening news, we all heard it in the kitchen. Tune in tonight for the latest updates to this developing story as our experts analyze the shocking video released today of Officer Paul Galuzzo's arrest of Rashad Butler. Suddenly, the TV went mute. Someone in the living room must have found the remote, but it didn't matter. It was too late. The kitchen was so silent, I could hear my pulse in my ears, pumping red-hot burning blood into my face. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't move. But I wasn't alone. No one did. We might have stayed like that, frozen in time, but Mr. Galuzzo busted into the kitchen from the living room in a kind of frantic waddle, holding a spread of dirty paper plates in his hands. Hey, maybe we need to get some more burgers going. He sort of stuttered, more nervous than I'd ever heard him, but he stopped short as he looked around the shocked crowd in the kitchen. Well, I'm not making any more right now, Paul said from the doorway, staring back at his dad. Yeah, no, yes, of course, I just mean... Look, Paul told his dad, interrupting him. Take it easy. He sighed, but then he lifted his head and glanced around the kitchen through the screen door. Let's just say it. There's going to be more of this press. It's going to look ugly, but everything's going to be just fine. This just comes with the job. It'll be all right. He remained on the porch, but he leaned forward, his thick arms going up on either side of the doorframe. But yeah, he added, I do need everyone to stick by me, especially family. Everyone immediately started saying how they supported him, and he nodded and smiled, but was looking past all the women to me. You too, Quinn, he added. Right now, I need your ass out here on the court for a little 2-on-2. I was so freaked out, it was a freaking relief just to be given an order. Okay, I said dumbly, and I swear there were a few faces in the room, including my own Ma's and Mrs. Galuzzo's, who looked at me with a swelling pride, as if he'd just asked me to saddle up and join the posse on the hunt for some ruthless criminal, and I was putting down my farming tools to go join the greater cause. I passed Jill on my way to the porch, and I tapped her elbow as I walked by. She could hold her own better than anyone I knew, but I wanted to let her know she wasn't alone, because at least Jill was strong enough to actually say what I was only thinking. Maybe everyone else at the party was nervous for Paul, but I was nervous about him, especially as I followed him down to the driveway. 2-on-2, Paul said. All rebounds are offensive. After a basket, you got to make 3 passes before you take another shot. Got it? He waved his thumb between Guzzo and himself. Galuzzo's against you two dumbasses. The dumbasses were me and Dwyer, of course. They gave us the ball first, and from the first drive, I knew it was going to be a physical game. I didn't shoot. I just dribbled and kept Paul slapping at my forearm and side. He taught me to dribble, a little too well. Guzzo's too big to try to take him to the hoop, but he took my bait, so I got the lane plugged with both Galuzzo's, and Dwyer popped out back by the top of the key. I got him the ball with a no-look pass, and he made the shot. Get your ass in action, Paul told his brother. This went on for a while, and the game got rougher. The score stayed close, but none of us could hope to out-rebound Guzzo, so they made more points off our missed shots than they could make on their own. Their driveway is narrow, and the rest of the time Paul and Guzzo bumped us until we were backed up against one of the houses on either side. But while Paul's arms were as thick as my neck, I beat him off the dribble, and twice in a row I got a foot around him and nailed fadeaway jumpers Guzzo couldn't block. "What, you think you're English now?" Paul said to me. "No." Paul put his hand in the air for us to stop. "Wait, was that even 3 passes?" "Yeah," Dwyer said. "You lose and count." I laughed, trying to keep it light. But Paul didn't. We checked, and he came up all over me. If we'd had the full space of a real court, this would have made it easier to get around him, but in the driveway he just kept bumping me back and back until I was almost out to the sidewalk. The driveway sloped down, and I was in the street when Paul finally eased up. "Where the hell are you going?" I didn't answer. I just chucked the ball from the street. It wasn't a real shot, and I didn't think I could actually make it. I just wanted to watch it hit the rim and see what would happen. It hit the top of the backboard and bounced into the yard near the grill. "What's up with that?" Guzzo yelled. "You gotta be tougher than that," Paul said to me. "You can't give up. I'm just trying to help you, Quinn. You gotta keep your head in the game and nowhere else. You got that?" "Man," I said, "this isn't a game." I brushed past him and walked up the driveway. "I'm done," I said. Dwyer and Guzzo started to complain, but Paul's voice rose up over theirs. "I'm just trying to help you, Quinn. Like I always have. You remember that." How could I forget? I collected the ball from the yard and tossed it to Dwyer, then went inside. I said a quick goodbye to Mrs. Galuzzo and told Ma I'd meet her at home, then left through the front door, taking the steps 2 at a time, half expecting Paul to be there, blocking my path, reminding me how many times he'd been the one working with me in that same driveway, the one cheering me on from the stands in my middle school, JV, and now varsity basketball games, the one who taught me how to angle the blade beneath my chin when I shaved. But he wasn't there. He was back under the basket with Guzzo and Dwyer, showing Dwyer how to get a leg around a man bigger than him. The same move I'd used on him moments before.